Welcome to the 2022 primary candidate, sorry, I'll start over. Welcome to the 2022 primary election candidate videos, made possible by a partnership between Collin County Votes, an initiative of the Collin County Business Alliance, the Allen, Frisco, McKinney, and Plano Chambers of Commerce. I'm Leanne Libby, General Manager of Community Impact Newspaper in Plano, and I'm excited to introduce our viewers to Kevin Morris, running for House District 67. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. So we're going to jump right in with the first question. In your own words, what is the role of a state legislator?
The role of a state legislator, in my belief, is to be an advocate for his constituency, his or her constituency. We have so many people, so many voices that right now I don't think are being heard, and a state legislator is important to keep a pulse on your district, know what's important to your constituents, and represent that in the Texas House of Representatives. Yeah, I think that's. I don't. Sorry, I'm still trying to figure that out. I think that was it for my answer, or I might need
Yeah,
to
that's
have you
good.
guys.
That's good. Well, so we're going to next get into a little bit deeper. So tell us, if elected, what would be your top 2 to 3 legislative priorities?
Top 2 to 3 legislative priorities would be women's health care rights, um, voting rights being restored, and public school funding. First, with women's reproductive health care rights, it was an egregious overreach on the part of the state legislature and the governor to create the law that we now have in place, where it's forcing women to go to other states to get the health care that they need and they should be able to get right here in Texas. Voting rights need to be restored. It needs to be easier to vote. It needs to be easier to access polling locations. When you're talking the Plano area, McKinney, Allen, where you've got polling locations all over the place, that's one thing. When you get out into more rural areas, Blue Ridge, Farmersville, Princeton, where you don't have so many different options to go and vote, it's really it takes a bigger chunk out of your day. It just makes it so much more difficult to vote. And our vote is our only voice that we have. We shouldn't be trying to suppress our voice. And as far as public school funding goes, Texas has not replaced the money that they took out adequately. Following the 2008 recession, public school funding was cut by, I believe, $5.4 billion. And yeah, we've gone back and added a little bit to that, but our state funding for public education is still not what it needs to be. We're 43rd in the nation in education, and our teachers on average make about $10,000 less than other states. We need to be a leader in public education, and our teachers need to be paid like leaders of a state that's leading the nation. It's hard to find and keep teachers right now because of that pay discrepancy with other states, and we really need to buckle down and correct the public school funding and our teachers' pay.
So Collin County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country. What are your thoughts on the growth to date, and what would your priorities be going forward?
Priorities going forward is I want to make sure that the infrastructure is in place for the continued growth of Collin County. We've seen it over the last 20 years. There's the sprawl from Dallas-Fort Worth, and Collin County is going to become another hub. It's going to be as big as Fort Worth, if not larger. There's going to continue to be growth outward and north, further west. So you've got areas like Anna, Melissa, and Princeton that are going to be the next Frisco's and Plano's and McKinney's and Allen's in 10 years or so. Do we have the roads that can sustain that type of volume, the traffic, the population density? Are we in place right now to set up our future residents for success, to set them up for infrastructure that will actually be able to make adequate living for them without having traffic backups? That just makes it there's certain areas around, not necessarily in Collin County, where infrastructure was ignored, and as a result, you've got 2-lane roads going north south that are backed up for way too long. If with a little bit of foresight and a little bit better planning, you could have expanded those roads and you can make commuting a little bit easier, a lot easier, to be honest with you. So I think that infrastructure is going to be one of our biggest needs. That rural broadband in those areas, but that goes alongside with infrastructure. But it's critical to our needs to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to support our growth.
So, speaking of traffic and transportation, what would you say is the biggest transportation issue facing the county, and how would you address it?
The biggest transportation issue facing the county right now is a real lack of public transportation. It means more roads on our highways. It means higher costs associated with commuting for residents and constituents. Um, I would work with county officials to find out what types of solutions are out there to give ourselves a solid public transportation system, not one that just goes north and south, but one that reaches all areas of Collin County. I think that's one thing that Dallas Fort Worth has really forgotten about or overlooked that could be critical to the development of this hub, of this metroplex. Public transportation is an important need, and it's something that we have continued. And if elected, I'm not going to continue to overlook the need for public transportation.
So, what do you see as the top need for the business community, and what would you do to help meet those needs to ensure continued economic growth?
The top need to me for the business community, we have the growth. We can sustain our growth, but right now, the growth is stagnant because we're still dealing with 2 years of coronavirus, COVID 19. I would encourage everybody possible to get vaccinated because once we reach herd immunity, we will be able to go back to life, a closer thing to normal life as we knew it. Um, when we continue to run into different variants that make it harder for our businesses to thrive and make it harder for people to feel safe going out shopping, to do anything, um, it's a real hindrance into the growth of the economy. Another thing that I think is a priority is we really need to take a hard look at what we can do to stop investment firms from buying up all our real estate. Right now, the real estate market in Collin County, in certain areas, you have a 1 month inventory. Uh, it's very, very hard to get in to find a new home. People are paying way above market price. First time homeowners are extremely challenged if they want to get into this area. And I think that that can be a detriment to the growth of Collin County because we want to bring these people in because they're highly skilled um, people that fit needs within the growth plan, business wise. But if they can't find homes that they can afford within a reasonable commute, then they're not going to come here. We're going to have the growth, but we really need to encourage vaccinations to sustain growth, um, to make sure it's safe to go out. And then, oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. We can move on to the next question. It's
Okay.
also on the business community. So the business community and many of the organizations representing it have prioritized promoting equity and diversity through hiring practices, programs, community investments. Because Collin County is such a diverse area in every sense of the word, can you talk about what equity and diversity mean to you?
Equity and diversity mean to me that everybody has the same fair shot, the same opportunities. You and I would get the same opportunities. People of color, women of color, everybody deserves the same fair chance. Equity and diversity means that everybody should be treated with empathy, compassion, dignity, humanity. Um, we really need to remember that there's truly more that binds us together as a community rather than what the media would like to think about having us driven so far apart. We're all here to make our lives better and to make lives better for our neighbors. Um, as far as equity and diversity goes, we need to keep that in mind and just remember that um, everybody deserves the same fair chance, the same compassion, humanity, dignity, and um, just love for community.
So, last question. If you were talking to someone from outside of Collin County, maybe thinking of moving here or moving their business here, what would be your 30-second elevator pitch?
It's outstanding. There's so much growth here. If you are going to move to an area, you're going to see in the next 10 years a population that I believe just 2 or 3 years ago was around 900,000 for Collin County, and I believe the estimates are upwards of 3 million people in 20 years is the estimate. So the growth is just going to be off the charts. If you want to have a successful business, you will bring it here and you will experience exponential growth. Um, it's a great place to live. It's got access to everything that you would need. I love living in Plano because I can go 10 minutes anyway, north, south, east, west, and I can find anything I'm looking for. There is so much accessibility to different various services, restaurants, shopping, everything that you can need uh, is right here in Collin County. You don't have to look very hard for anything.
Great. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today and for allowing our voters the opportunity to hear directly from you on these important issues.
Thank you for having me.